celebrating during the month of November, as in every year, International Education Week, and we have been organizing sessions related to education in the U.S. And featuring our wonderful alumni and sharing their experience studying in the U.S. and beyond. Today's session will be on understanding the visa application process, a student visa application process. But before we invite our guest speaker, Michelle, to present on understanding the visa process, I'd like to share with you a little bit about Education USA for those of you who are joining us for the first time. Education USA is a U.S. Department of State network of over 430 advising centers in 175 countries and territories. We promote U.S. higher education, of course, around the world by offering free, accurate, and comprehensive and current information about over 4,000 educational institutions in the United States. And so for our advising centers, we have an advising center for the West Bank, and we are hosted, both the West Bank Advising Center and the Gaza Advising Center are hosted at Mideast. And so our advising center in the West Bank is located in the Mideast office in Ramallah, and in Gaza is in Gaza City. Our Education USA advisor, Abdul Magdadi, is also here with us today. And so we look forward to, as a team, answering any questions you may have related to Education USA. But specifically for this session, it will focus on the visa application process. As an overview, a quick overview of our center activities prior to the COVID pandemic in March of 2020. Throughout the months afterwards, we've been holding our sessions and our advising consultations virtually. But before March 2020, and hopefully we will begin resuming, we actually have begun resuming our in-person sessions, and we will continue to do so as the situation presents itself. But before that, and hopefully in the future, we'll continue to have advising office hours at our offices. We offer group sessions. We are out there in the community, at schools, at universities, at cultural centers and youth centers, as well as our American Spaces locations in Jerusalem, and of course in Gaza. And so these activities, including college fairs that we've organized in previous years, we facilitate visits by U.S. higher education representatives to visit our country and to meet with students in person and share their information about their respective universities and colleges. And so we will continue with our virtual sessions and webinars, but we will also begin, and we have begun resuming our in-person, and we look forward to meeting many of you in person in the near future. Next slide, please. Okay, Marwa.
Thank you so much, Sana. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session. My name is Marwa, and I am the Education USA Advising Assistant based at the Mideast office in Ramallah. So the 5 steps to US study is basically your guide, whether you want to pursue a short-term or a full degree program in the United States. The first step is to research your options. It is really important for you to learn about the different universities and colleges in the United States, about the programs that they offer. There are over 4,000 accredited U.S. higher education institutions, and it should be your priority to choose, the best fit universities and colleges. Of course, there are different websites and search engines that you can use, so you can actually narrow down your options. The second step is to finance your studies. You also need to understand how much it will cost you to study at a specific specific US higher education institution, and you need to learn about the different expenses and how are you going to pay for these expenses. Of course, many students also ask us about scholarship opportunities and financial aid, and you also need to learn about these opportunities and if the university or college offer these opportunities to international students. The third step is to complete your application. Of course, there are different application requirements that you need to prepare yourself for. These requirements will differ from one university to another, and of course from one program to another. And so you need to check the requirements and prepare yourself ahead of time and ahead of the application deadline. The fourth step is to prepare for your student visa, which we will talk more about in today's session. Of course, there are different steps that you need to walk through so you can actually apply for your student visa. The fifth and final step is to prepare for your departure. After you receive your visa and you want to travel to the United States, there are some arrangements that you need to do, of course, before you travel to the United States, whether it is here in your home country or whether it is with your host institution. And so the 5 steps to a study is basically your guide, and you can find so much information about these steps on the Education USA website, which you can see on the screen, educationusa.state.gov. And the information will actually be divided based on the level of study that you are interested in. So there are different sections like undergraduate, graduate, community colleges, short-term programs, and other options as well. So you can actually check out the website for more information and resources. Of course, please connect with the Education USA advising centers in your city or in your country. As today's session, we usually have different live interaction sessions. We stream these sessions on Facebook. We share the announcement also on different social media platforms. And we also upload these recordings to our YouTube channel. And we usually upload different information and articles and opportunities about different US government exchange programs also on our social media platforms. Here you can see our contact information. If you are from the West Bank, please make sure to connect with us at ramallah@educationusa.org, or if you are from Gaza, you can connect with the Education USA Advising Center there at gaza@educationusa.org. And you can see the contact information for the different Middle East offices and also the US Palestinian Affairs Unit. You can check out their website to learn more about the US government exchange programs for students and for professionals as well. And you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram, US Palestinian Affairs Unit. And now I will hand it over to Michelle. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Michelle, and I am a consular officer here in Jerusalem. I work in the consular section, and I've been working here for about 9 months in Jerusalem, but I've been working with the Department of State for about 5 years now, primarily in the visa sections. And I just want to start by saying thank you all for being here, and for wanting to learn more about the student visa process to study in the United States. Education is something that is really close to my heart. Before I started working for the U.S. government, I was a teacher. I was a teacher both in the United States and abroad, and I also studied abroad when I was in the university in the United States. I studied abroad in Spain, and all of these experiences I feel really shaped me and helped me grow as a person. And so I really believe that studying abroad is one of the most wonderful things that you can do. It helps you grow as a person. It gives you so many more opportunities, broadens your worldview. And so just first of all, thank you for being here and being willing to learn about this process. Next slide, please. So a little bit about what I'll talk about today. I'll start talking about the visa application process and what to expect. That'll be the majority of the presentation, but then I'll go into also answering some common questions that we get. And then at the end, I'll give you a few resources for continuing to learn about applying for student visas and how you can contact us. At the end, we'll also have time for some of your specific questions. I can't answer questions about any one specific case due to privacy concerns, but if you have general questions about the application process or the interview, I'm happy to answer those at the end. Next slide, please. So there are three main types of student visas to the United States, the F visa, the J visa, and the M visa. And each of them serves a little bit of a different purpose. So the F visa is for a student who is in an academic or a language program. So typically we see these a lot with people who want to study for 4 years in a university in the United States, or maybe someone who wants to study English for a year in a community college, something like that. The J visa is the exchange visitor visa, and these are typically for specific programs that are of a specific duration. So they might be for a secondary school student, a specific period of time in a college or university, and it can be for a degree or a non-degree, but typically these are affiliated with a type of program. And then we have the M visa, which is for vocational students or other non-academic students. And we see this a lot, particularly with flight academies or flight students. That would be one example. And so sometimes we get the question, which type of visa should I apply for? Which one is right for me? And the best answer for you is to get in contact with the designated official at your school, and they will be able, at your school in the United States, and they will be able to tell you which type of visa is most appropriate for the program of study that you want to do in the United States. Next slide, please. So how to apply for a student visa. The first step is to gather all of your documents together. So after you've identified which type of visa you need, you will be in contact with your host institution in the United States, and they will provide you with a form that you need in order to apply for the visa. So if you need an F or an M visa, your school will give you the I-20 form. If you need a J visa, your school will give you the DS 2019 form. After you have your form, you can make an appointment at either the embassy in Jerusalem or the branch office in Tel Aviv, whichever you prefer, it doesn't matter. And you can go to the website that you see there in point number 2, the il.usembassy.gov website, and there you'll be able to see how to schedule your appointment. Then, after you have your after you've scheduled your appointment, you'll complete the online visa application form. So the application form itself is called the DS-160. And as part of the visa application, you'll actually have to pay 2 different fees. So the first fee is the SEVIS fee, which is also known as the I-901 fee. And this fee is set by officials in the United States, by the Department of Homeland Security. And it varies depending on what school you're going to. So that is sort of a variable fee. Then you also have to pay the visa fee itself. We also call it the MRV fee. And that is typically $160, although there can be a reciprocity fee. We typically see this with people applying on Jordanian passports. And then finally, the fourth point, you'll have an interview with the consular officer. And after your interview, you'll receive the visa if you are qualified, and then you'll go on to study in the United States. Just in terms of timing, F and M visa students, they can get a visa up to 120 days before the report date listed on the form. So you do have about 4 months before that date to apply for your visa. And for J's, you can get the visa as soon as you get your DS 2019 form. And we do recommend applying as soon as possible, just because sometimes there are additional documents that we need, and so the earlier you apply, the more likely it is that you'll get your visa before you need to leave to the United States. Next slide, please. Great. So now I'll talk a little bit about the interview and what to expect during the interview. So there are a number of things the consular officer is going to ask you about in your interview, and you can definitely expect to have to answer information or tell us information about the 4 things that you see on this screen. So the first point, just who you are. What's your story? You know, what do you do right now? You know, just a little bit about your family and what your goals are for studying in the United States. The second thing is about the program of study itself. So what do you want to study? How long will your program be? Where is your program? Why do you want to study there, for example? So just kind of tell us about your program of study. The third thing, how you're going to pay for it. So will you pay for it? Will a family member pay for it? Do you have a sponsor? Do you have a scholarship? How are you going to pay for the tuition and your expenses in the United States? And then finally, what you intend to do after your studies. So when your program is over in the United States, what do you want to do? Do you want to work? Or do you want to continue studying? Where do you want to do those things? Tell us what your future plans are as well. It is important to be prepared for the interview and to be able to answer these questions. We will, of course, ask you these questions in order to get the information, but the more prepared you are to tell us about yourself, the easier the interview will be for you. I think that's enough for this slide. So next slide, please. Great. So we often get questions about the required documents and what you need to bring to the interview. And these 5 things are what you need. So we need to see either your I-20 form if you're applying for an F or an M visa, or we need to see the DS 2019 form for the J visa. We need you to have a valid passport. We need you to have a photo. This photo needs to be within the last 6 months. Sometimes people, maybe if they've applied for a prior visa, they'll use a photo, you know, from last year, a couple years ago when they applied for their last visa. We will have to require a new photo in that case. So please make sure that it is a recent photo within the last 6 months. You'll need to show us that you've paid the fees. Again, there are those 2 different kinds of fees: the MRV fee for the visa itself, and then the I-901 fee, which is the SEVIS fee. Both of those will need to be paid before we can issue a visa. And as I mentioned, there may be an additional reciprocity fee, and this is just dependent on the different fees that countries charge for their own student visas. And then, of course, we need to see the confirmation page from your visa application. You'll need to bring those. So this is all that is 100% required for you to bring to your interview. Many people bring more information, this is fine. You can bring additional documents if you want and if you think they're relevant to your case. Understand that the consular officer may or may not ask to see those other documents that you bring. So you're welcome to bring whatever you want and be prepared. We may not ask to see all of it. Next slide, please. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about refusals. So if you are refused, you'll receive a written explanation, a letter, basically telling you the section of law under which you don't qualify. So we have three main reasons, I guess you could say, as to why we refuse a visa application. So the first one is called 214B. That's the name of the code of law. And this is basically if the applicant can't show that they're entitled to non-immigrant status. It's the most common visa denial that we have. It's important to know that you can apply again in the future for either a student visa or a different kind of visa if you receive this type of refusal. And it is possible to be approved for those subsequent visas. Typically, this is because the situation has changed, or you're better able to express yourself, something that typically we see something different about a subsequent visa application that we didn't know about at the first visa application. The second type of refusal that we see is called 221G. And many times people get discouraged. They get a letter and they automatically just think, oh, this is the end. But especially in 221G cases, oftentimes we just need to see additional documents. So there's just something else that we need in order to be able to continue with the visa application. And you'll get specific instructions on what you need to provide in order to continue with the application. And it's definitely possible after this that you get an approved visa. So it's just important to follow the instructions if you get a letter like this. Administrative processing, it's just a term that we use when we need to kind of look at something else a little bit more closely, just doing more processing on our end. We might ask you for some more information. We might not. It just means we need a little bit more time than the few minutes that we get with you in front of us at the interview. And it is unique, as I mentioned, the 221G. Not everyone has this. It gets a 221G for the same reason. And then we have 212A ineligibilities. So typically this is if someone has committed some sort of crime. It's not very common. One important thing to note is that if you do get a refusal, we don't tell anyone about it. So to protect your privacy, we don't tell your school about it. We don't tell Education USA about it. We don't tell Amethyst about it. This is your application. And so we won't share details about your denial with others. Again, these are just some notes about the refusal, but many people also get approved. And if your visa is approved, typically you'll get it in about a week via WASL about a week after the interview. So you can expect to get that via mail. We don't typically do pickups at the embassy unless you have a very urgent reason for travel. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we'll move on to some questions that people commonly ask about the visa process. Some of them are on the screen, and then some of them I'll just talk about afterwards. So the first question is about paying someone. Should you pay an agent to prepare the application? And the truth of the matter is, this is not necessary. You don't need to pay anyone. You can do this all yourself. If you have someone help you you are still responsible for all of the information that you put on your application. And if someone does help you fill it out, there's no advantage because no one has a special relationship with us in the consular section. So we treat everyone the same, whether you go through an agency or whether you prepare on your own. And so you can really do everything on yourself, by yourself. You don't need to pay anyone. The next question, when can I get my visa? Again, as I mentioned earlier, we definitely recommend applying early just to make sure that you have all of the preparations done in time and you have your visa before you need to travel to the United States. We can issue your visas up to 120 days, so about 4 months before your studies begin, and that can be really helpful. Just to give you some peace of mind that you have your visa ready and in hand. And then if it's your first time going to the United States as a student, you can enter 30 days before your program starts, and this will give you time to get set up, set up your apartment, buy anything you need to, meet any school officials, get to know the campus a little bit. And then if you have to meet a minimum income level is another common question. And so the answer is no, you don't need to make a certain amount of money. Your sponsor doesn't need to make a certain amount of money. But what you do need to do is show that you have enough finances to cover the first year of your studies. And as I mentioned, it can be from you if you're paying for it for yourself, or it can come from a family member or a friend or a scholarship. But we need you to explain who's going to be paying and show us that they have those funds. A few other common questions that we get is whether you're allowed to work on your student visa. The answer is usually yes. On a J visa, you can work. For Fs and Ms, there are more restrictions. You need to get permission from the Department of Homeland Security, and there are some restrictions on where you can work and how many hours you can work. But in most cases, there is eventually a possibility for you to work in the United States in addition to your studies. Another question we often get is if you need family in the United States to get a visa. And the answer to this is no. We may ask about your family in the interview, whether you have family in the United States. Yes, no. It's a factor that we consider as part of your whole application, but it's not that if you have family, you get a visa, or if you have family, you don't get a visa. It's just a factor that we consider in part of your overall application. Another common question is, do I need to be an academic superstar in order to get a visa? And again, the answer is no. You don't need to be the best student in your class to get a visa to study in the United States. We're interested in all students, but we're interested in serious students. So we just want you to be well informed about what you're going to study in the United States, that you're knowledgeable about the subject you're studying, and that you're there to study. And then the last last kind of concern that we hear a lot is that the consular officer wants to hear the right answers. And so sometimes people try to give answers that they think are correct, or they think they're what the consular officer wants to hear. And the reality is that that's actually very confusing, because it's best to answer honestly so that we understand your whole situation, and we can get a better sense of who you really are and what you want to do. So there are no right answers. The right answer is just telling us about yourself and about your plans in the United States. Next slide, please. Okay, so here in this part of the presentation, we'll just talk a little bit about resources and where you can look online to get more information. So one of the best resources that we have is, you can see at the top here, travel.state.gov right next to the logo. And we have a whole page just on student visas. And so you only see part of the page right here. There's more information if you would scroll down, but it outlines the entire process for student visas and how you would determine the different types of visas, what you need, things like that. So it's a very, very useful website, and I highly recommend it. It gives a lot of really good background knowledge for those who want to study in the United States. It also, actually at the very bottom of this page, tells you what the wait time to get a student visa is. A lot of people are concerned that it might take a very long time to get an appointment. That's not the case for student visas. It takes about only 2 to 3 weeks to get an appointment for a student visa. And so virtually every student is able to get an appointment before they need to study. Next slide, please. Great. And here are some useful resources for you to learn more. So as I mentioned earlier, that travel.state.gov website is extremely useful and has a lot of good information on it. And then particularly for J visas, the U.S. Department of State has a website that's just about these exchange programs and exchange visitors. And so you can see we have a couple of websites listed there. The Department of Home, once you're in the U.S. and studying in your program, the Department of Homeland Security works a lot with students and their status there. And so these websites show kind of the Department of Homeland Security's their information from them for students who are studying in the United States. So you'll see some of these websites talk about the SEVIS fee, the practical training. So F students can also get hands-on training in the United States after their course of study is finished. And then the last link you'll see there talks a little bit more about employment on your student visa. And next slide, please. Great. So just a little bit of a note on COVID-19. This is pretty recent guidance from just about 2 weeks ago. The most important points for you are going to be the first point and the last point. So all non-immigrant, non-citizen air travelers to the United States, so that would be anyone on a student visa here, they'll be required to be fully vaccinated and provide proof of vaccination status prior to boarding an airplane to the United States. And then you'll see the last point is exemptions will be considered, but on an extremely limited basis. So that is the current guidance for entering the United States on a visa. Next page, please. Great. And then this last slide just talks about how you can contact us. So we have a couple of really great resources here. We have both the Embassy and Palestinian Affairs Unit Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages and website. They often post really great up-to-date information and links that are relevant to visas. Applying for non-immigrant visas, that's the website that you'll use to make your appointments and fill out the application forms. Visa service update. Again, as I mentioned, we are doing student visas. We are giving interviews for those here, and so we've resumed all those services. And as I mentioned, wait times are just a couple of weeks here. And then, of course, we have a customer service line if you have additional questions.
I think we can wrap up and thank everyone for joining us, and we especially thank our guest speaker, Michelle, for sharing with us valuable information about understanding the visa process and encouraging anyone who is interested in studying in the U.S. To continue following our pages and to connect with us directly to help you with the process and provide you with resources in addition to the resources offered on educationusa.state.gov and also the resources available on the U.S. Embassy Jerusalem website as well. Michelle, any last words before we sign off?
Thank you again for having me as your guest speaker. It was really a pleasure to talk with everyone today. And again, I just thank everybody for their interest in studying in the United States. And I hope that you'll consider applying for a program in the United States and applying for a visa. And I hope that you will have a great experience in the United States as a student. Thank you.